Oh, how I,
Hi, David Evie. Welcome. So I am so interested in what you've done. You've sent me a PDF, which is really interesting. I've watched your TEDx talk. Fascinating. Tell me about how your life began as a musician.
I was 6 years old. My future teacher came to our school, sitting on the gymnasium floor, and I said, I want to play the cello. And ever since then, I dove in, and I loved where music could take me
Mm,
inside.
mm.
And so it was always uh, this journey of what it could awaken within me. And I loved it so much, and I started believing in myself when I was about 14 or 15, and went for it. So I followed my heart and went to the Eastman School of Music for my undergraduate, and was just like, heaven. This is. I've got family, I've got music, but I've also got insecurity, I realized. And so
Right.
um, when I was a senior, suddenly I was like, okay, it's at the end of this wonderful summer music camp. This for that happened to last for 4 long years, and I can't sign up for another course. Looks like I'm going to have to start some difficult choices. And so I was not one of those top ranked cellists. And, I started realizing that, oh my gosh, the orchestra jobs are like a handful a year. And there's a whole bunch of
Yes.
us in my class that are competing on my level, much less other colleges, much less other
Yes.
years.
Yes. So the
And
idea that if you're not number one, then you're not there.
yeah. So this
Yeah.
sudden wake up call of like, and the chamber music that I absolutely adore. That's an even tougher job. And
Yes.
so and then I went out and played for a regional orchestra. And sometimes they would call up the college and say, "Hey, can you send us some players to fill in the ranks?" So
Yeah.
I went out and I had this horrible experience. Where when you're in college, when you're in high school, you got this, your youth, your energy, your joy, and then I went out and played with the most cynical, miserable, uninspired people, and it was just like, it was such a dark experience that I came back and I said, what am I doing? I want to make a difference in this world.
So do you
And
think they were playing routine robotically then? Is that how they were uninspired? It was.
it was just no life. There was no life in them. The conductor was just, there was no spark.
Mhm.
The audience was just kind of like, and it
Yeah.
was it was it was it scared me to death. I mean, granted, it was a regional orchestra and not a large city orchestra, so it was. Uh, it's fair enough to say that that was not the best representation. But then I came to learn that, you
But it
know,
doesn't matter if you're a beginner or advanced. That music needs to come up to life, whatever level
yeah,
you're at, doesn't it?
yeah, and then I started to realize and to learn that some of the best orchestras have some of the most miserable musicians in them because they expected the position to give them happiness.
Right.
When I win this job, then I will be happy.
Mm,
And the truth of it is, it never works that way. It
mm,
never works that way.
mm.
So anyway, so I had this huge wake up call, and I said to my teacher Paul Katz, what am I supposed to do? And he said, well, David, you have to look into your heart and follow where it leads. And for me, that was this terrifying, this terrifying thing because I was just had closed up to survive, to help my insecurities survive.
Well, that's the fight or flight, I think, isn't it?
The
Almost the fight or flight kind of
yes,
primal instinct.
yes,
Just
exactly.
cope, just battle on, or you'll
Battle
crumble.
on and forget about what's in here.
Yes.
And so I realized that I really wanted to make a bigger difference than I saw myself being able to do in the music
Yes.
world.
Yes.
And so, okay, I'll join the Peace Corps. I'll do something. I went back to school the next day, and suddenly I could appreciate, instead of like denying the fact that my other colleagues were amazing players, I could start enjoying their playing for the first time in my life. And I,
Right.
I know that might sound stupid, but it was just such an eye-opening experience for me that I was so afraid because if they were good and they were better than me, then that was something that I couldn't deal with because then my whole sense of security was just would just
So
be
your focus changed really from the playing to the music and being connected with the music.
yes. And so as soon as I made that switch, then it was just like, oh, music's okay. Let's
Yeah,
keep going.
yeah.
So I graduated, had just a fantastic 4 years. Went on to the Indiana School of Music. Got to study with Johannes Starker. So it's I've been guided and I've had these amazing experiences.
Yeah.
And the same thing happened. So I graduated and I really wanted to make a difference. I was playing principal cello in a regional orchestra,
Yes.
and it was going fine. And so I joined this musical storytelling troupe, and I thought, this is where I'll be able to make my uh, biggest impact. And so we were a group of 5 musicians, and we told stories. We enacted stories with our instruments as props, and with the music that we would create. And it was a really fantastic concept. But then it turned out to be too much art for art's sake, and so it was just
Right.
like I wanted to pass along that joy that I felt inside,
Yes.
and it turned out not to be about that in the end. So then I found the Suzuki Method, which I was trained in, and I
Hmm.
thought, to create musicians with a beautiful heart,
Hmm.
that's where it's at. And so I dove into that, and
Now, of course,
that
Suzuki
was
starts with sound rather than with reading, so to speak, doesn't
yes,
it?
yes, it
Yes.
does. And uh, and I realized that that wasn't always the answer either, because there are a lot of people that just go and say, they slap on their I'm a Suzuki teacher without fully and understanding, without going through that inner transformation.
So it was still mechanical, you think?
It's still mechanical, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I found meditation, and that is what truly turned my life around. Suddenly I was able to have these experiences where all of that it finally connected that inner experience into something much greater.
Can you can you tell us what you mean by meditation? Because people will have so many different ideas about what that word might
Right.
mean.
Yeah, so I had this is back in the early 90s, back before Google, back before the internet. And uh, my wife at the time and I had dabbled in New Age books, because it was really interesting, and had heard about meditation but never really understood what it was or how to practice it.
Mhm.
And so I ended up having this health crisis, and I was in some pretty bad shape, and my wife at the time said, "Well, if you're going through this, you better take a look at your life." And so I said, but then I said, maybe she's right. And
Yeah.
so I had heard about this meditation, and just that idea, that that gift that it seemed to promise, made me inquisitive. What was
Okay.
this? How can I learn how to do this? It sounds
Yes.
like it's a really cool thing. And this was before, way before yoga, way before. And I had dabbled in yoga. It was just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was way too restless and uh, and skeptical to
Yes.
understand what it might have in my
Yes.
life. I was just so, intensely driven and so intensely focused that but then I realized this whole health crisis that I was going through was because I did not know how to take a deep breath. I
Okay.
did not know what it felt like to sit, to relax, and to breathe deeply.
So meditation starts with correct, or not even correct, just open, relaxed breathing.
And that's that. So I had so much to learn. So I went to the bookstore. That was my Google at the time.
Yes.
And I said, "Can I have the book on meditation?" And they said, "Oh, here's this book here, Buddhist. Here's this book here, Tibetan. Here's this book here. Oh, but you should get this one. It's a classic." And the title of it is Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramhansa Yogananda. And
Okay.
he was an Indian yogi who came to the United States in the 1920s and founded Self-Realization Fellowship. And his teachings are quite well known. And I read this book, and it was just like, yes, yes, yes. It was answering questions that I didn't know that I was asking
Okay.
consciously, and I realized that this was for me. And so I felt deeply called to explore this. So I started learning how to still my body, how to focus on my breath, and just the simplest things. That's what the thing that struck me the most was that I was being impacted by just the simplest of techniques. There's one of the first that you learn is even count breathing, where you inhale for a specific count, you hold the breath for a specific count, relaxed, and then you exhale for a specific count. And then, so just do that with me once. We'll just
Okay.
inhale for a count of six,
Okay.
hold for a count of six, and then exhale for a count of
Okay.
six. In through your nose. And as you hold, not try to go this way, but just allow the breath to pause and then
Okay.
exhale and relax.
Right.
So inhaling through your nose, gently hold, and slowly exhale. And, repeating that 3 times, it takes
Yeah.
you to this place of like, wow.
I liked where
It's,
you said about when you're holding the air for six, you're kind of letting it settle or be there, because otherwise, I think what we often do when we hold our breath is we grip the top of our chest all around our shoulders, and we literally hold, as in we use muscles to keep it
yeah.
there.
I
So
had
I like that.
a singer ask me, do you glottal stop? Do you cap off the air or not? So
Yes,
that's another thing you can
you
explore.
just let it be.
Yeah. Uh, and I do this with my audiences pre-COVID, of course,
Yeah.
but just that simple act of breathing together takes them into whole different place.
Yes.
Just that
So,
simple act.
so for you, the level of stress and anxiety that you were at that had caused, you to be in that place you were in, this was suddenly releasing that anxiety, the physical side. It was the mental side was releasing the physical.
Yes. And what I noticed is that my body, once I started giving it the chance to relax. Now, how many times have have you either performed or saw somebody else trying to perform, like they're backstage and they're shaking off and they're trying to get to that quiet place,
Yes.
and they've never practiced it. They have not created that backdrop through which to go. They just want to say, I need to relax, I need to relax, but they've never practiced relaxing.
It's
Uh,
like when you're really stressed and a friend comes up and tells you to relax. Well, and in your head you're thinking, well, if I could relax, I would have done it already.
and or when they just say just breathe, and it's just like, no, I'm not just gonna breathe. What good that's gonna do? Just breathe, yeah. But really, just breathe,
Yeah.
and it's so amazing how that started to transform my playing
I was going to say,
because
so how does this connect with your playing? This
yeah,
relaxation in your body, this letting the muscular tension go. How did you connect that? Because it's obviously beginning to connect with your soul, because it's not only freeing your body up, the stress in your body stresses your soul as well. So
yes,
by freeing the body, you were freeing your soul a little bit. So how's that then connecting through your playing and your music and making your music more expressive
oh
and
yeah,
more connected with the spirit of maybe where the composer themselves felt.
yes, exactly. So that's quite a quite a bit to get there,
So,
but
yeah.
anytime you have excess tension in your body, the signals from your brain, from your heart, will have a difficult route to get to the parts that express it. Um, and it doesn't matter where the tension is, it can be in your feet. Oftentimes, my students curl their toes, and I have to say, relax your toes. But what good does that do? Because it's just bow hair going across a string. I'll tell you, any energy that is being sucked in and held prevents is going to steal energy from being expressed. It's going to
Okay.
steal part of the sound. Don't ask me how it works, because again, it's just bow hair going across a string. What
I
good will it do?
Yes. So everything is channeled into the flow, and there is nothing blocking that flow or obstructing that flow.
Yeah. So for me, I was finding that, oh my gosh, I can do big shifts without being afraid of
Okay.
not hitting them. And
Okay.
so for me, this was just like this breakthrough. I had been trained but I had so much fear.
But then
And
if you were practicing and you did a big shift and it didn't go well,
I would just do it again and again and again and again,
okay,
but I would not address the fear. I would not
okay.
address the insecurity from that. And so basically, it's so interesting, this inner journey of the mind
Mm.
and all the beliefs of the limiting ego. Because for me, what was happening was that if I can't do something simple, I might not be very good. Therefore, my whole self-esteem would come crumbling down. So I would learn things through tension and try to keep them up, and it's just like holding a crumbling ceiling. And it's this
Is it
instead of
is it is
having
it also Western society that we drive to be the best, we drive to compete, we drive, whereas almost Buddhist society isn't that. It's being at one with nature, for instance, and it's being
you know and it's yeah, it's 50-50. I've heard, uh, and the thing that I learned through this, which is the main important thing, was that the great artists don't have these barriers. They don't have the tension barriers within them.
no,
And when I hear a great artist perform, I feel like they are sharing. It's
yes,
this sharing. It's not,
yes.
look at me. I did have this chance to perform with a Paganini competition winner, and his it was awful. It was, I mean, he could play really, really fast, but he was not the musician. And subsequently, his career was just like he did not have a good career after winning.
I remember going to a similar event where I went to see a jazz saxophonist who'd won an Emmy for their playing. And that person, when I first watched them, I was, wow, they were going up and down the scales and this improvisation so fast. And then halfway through, I was thinking, I don't think I can watch it anymore. There's no tune, there's no music.
Yeah,
Everything's technically so fast, it looks like your saxophone's going to catch fire. But and I'm in awe of the technique, but I'm not
yeah,
feeling the music.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
So, and that's such a difficult thing to teach. One of my teachers said, "You've got good musical instincts, and that can't be taught."
Uh huh.
But I think, from my own experience, that it can be taught just through this path of relaxation.
So
And
how did this link from so you open up this path of meditation, which allows what's inside you to flow through your performance better.
yeah,
How did you then go from that stage to helping people around you, and how does it then improve their performances? What's the connection there? How did that happen?
well, so let's see. I the spiritual teachings that I follow. I'm living in Portland, Oregon right now, and I had moved here in 1996, and I was playing in the Portland Opera, and we were suffering under a miserable conductor. And if you've ever had to endure a rehearsal where the conductor is frustrated,
Hmm.
if the
Hmm.
conductor ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. It was just this situation where it was just like, ugh, it was not a fun experience at all. And we were down in the pit of despair, and everything's limited. And I was driving home through the rain that night, and I had joined this spiritual organization, and they had a choir, and I realized, oh my gosh, they asked me to sing this solo, and I'm not a professional singer by any means, but they asked me to sing the solo. I better practice it. So I started singing this simple 40-second solo, and by the time I was done, I had to pull over to the side of the road and say, what in the world just happened? My misery was completely gone, and I felt this concentration of energy at my forehead, and I'm like, what is this? I've never had music affect me so deeply, and I've done everything from Renaissance to Baroque to classical to avant-garde to Pink Martini to everything, and nothing had changed me so dramatically as this. So I went home and I said, okay, I got to learn what's at the root of this. So I started studying the ancient yogic teachings of this. And what I started to learn is that music holds vibration, it holds consciousness. And there's a fantastic book I highly recommend. It's called, where are you? Oh, shoot. There you are. Talks with Great Composers by Alfred Abel. He interviews Brahms a year before his death.
Wow.
And he asks Brahms to reveal his source of inspiration. And Brahms says, okay, I'll tell you, but you must wait to publish this until 50 years after I'm dead. So Brahms says, I go into this state between dreaming and wakefulness. I meditate on a scripture passage. And then I start to feel vibrations thrill my body. And this is where I receive all of my melodic and inspiration. And the interviewer asks, "Oh, you mean like the subconscious?" And he says, "No, no, no. That implies something much, much lower. This is something much higher, which the superconscious." And interestingly enough, it's also a term that's used by the yogis to talk about that place where you're just connected. Handel, when he composed the Hallelujah chorus, was found with tears streaming down his face and his arms upraised. And afterwards he said, I saw the gates of heaven open before me and the great God himself revealed. And this is not the God with the white beard with a finger saying, hello. It's something much more cosmic, that, that enlightenment, nirvana, samadhi in the yogic traditions, that state of oneness where you're just feeling, and it's so hard to convey in words, but it's this place where people have been, the great saints have been able to go there and come back and try to pass along that experience. Brahms was a musical saint. He was able to and handle a musical bodhisattva, somebody who had touched that realm and had been able to channel through his music in creating this source code or a roadmap for us to touch that state of consciousness which he had fully touched. And that's what the great composers give us, this gift. We have this gift of being able to tap into that to our own limited capacity, however limited it might be.
So you're saying that almost through your breath, you're finding that resonance in your soul. And then obviously we have resonance in music. Is it connecting resonance of soul with resonance of sound?
So if you think of water waves being able to carry flotsam and jetsam to the soul, to the shore, sound waves are also able to convey thoughts, feelings, emotions, and so sound in this way allows us to resonate. And so my TED talk talks a lot about how sympathetic resonance, this amazing phenomenon of
Yes.
sympathetic resonance, and we talk about this all the time. That struck a chord in me. I resonate
Yes.
with that. We're on the
Yes.
same wavelength. I was touched. I
Yes.
was moved.
Yes.
I'm in tune with that idea.
Yeah.
We talk about this movement of energy inside of us. We can't measure it, we can't touch it, but we know it's there. So that awakening of soul which happens, and music is one of those the most direct ways that awakens that energy.
Mm.
Because what are we at our smallest level but little bits of vibration, of energy, of electrons, of little nucleus and protons, and so sound, that sound wave of energy comes into our bodies and it affects our bodies. We know this through the medical use of sonograms and ultrasounds,
Mm.
and so we're just barely scratching the surface. There are other books that I dove into dived into as well. This is Your Brain on Music, and Music, the Brain, and Ecstasy. And it studies
Wow.
all this amazing activity that's going on in the brain. and it's fascinating to hear start to understand how the brain works as far as the music. But once again, we have to turn to the more spiritual side of things to start understanding how music affects our souls in this way. Now, I want to make a disclaimer here that there's religion and then there's spirituality, and those
Hmm.
two share common traits, but they're completely different. Some of the
Okay.
greatest musicians are spiritual musicians, but not entrenched and not trying to dogmatize and not saying my religion is best.
Yes.
Music is this universal language, and it's also universal religion, if you will. It's this
Yes.
universal spiritual path,
Yes.
because it doesn't matter what race or creed or belief system that we have, it affects us all the same
Yes.
way. A
Yes.
beautiful note will convey love, will convey hope, no matter what you happen to believe as you go. So it's so coming all the way back now to how I got here. So I knew that I had more questions I uh,
Have
than I
answers.
knew how to find the answers for.
Yeah.
So I ended up moving to the Ananda spiritual community, which was founded by a disciple, direct disciple of Paramhansa Yogananda, and there I got to spend 12 years conducting a choir of meditators.
Wow.
Now, imagine working with people like you were said earlier about the Olympic trainers who taught uh, their
They're
athletes
athletes. Yeah.
to calm themselves before at the beginning of a race. So
Yes.
imagine working with a group of musicians, and that was their first job, was to meditate. So every time
Right.
before every rehearsal, we would spend time entering into this place.
Okay.
And it allowed me to explore what truly happens. Uh, Now, these are novice and intermediate singers. They weren't professionals by any means, but yet there were performances early on in my career there where it was kind of like, ooh, 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 oh, okay, we're done. It's over with. And then somebody came up to me after that and said, David, that was the most beautiful, heartfelt performance that I've heard. And
Wow.
it's just like, okay, there is there are other factors than intonation. There are
Yes.
other factors that then blend that affect the ears and the souls of the musicians. So I started thinking, okay, how do I make the most of that?
Yeah.
While at the same time decreasing because we all know that it can be quite distracting when a note falls out of place.
Yes.
It can be distracting, but it doesn't have to break with the experience.
No.
I uh, I would much rather hear an imperfect performance with someone who is just tapped in than to a perfect performance that's exclusively rigid and doesn't share. It doesn't. There's no vulnerability.
That's almost the Louis Armstrong of music, isn't it? Because in the singing sense, Louis Armstrong's voice is not one that a singing teacher might view as, rich in tone, but it's rich in expression.
Yes, that's very true. Yeah. So I started exploring how to improve the technique of the choir. And it was so interesting because I would go from the outside in. I'm like, okay,
Okay.
we got to match pitch. We have to, do this. We have to, um, and over. And God bless them, they were so patient with me. And then, and then I would come back the next night and say, okay, so, and here is a universal thing that I found even with my most beginning students that aren't meditators. You play a phrase. In this case, we were singing. So we would sing the phrase, we would stop, we would turn our awareness within, and we would look for that tiny spark, that wow, that really resonates with me. We would look for any internal awakening experience, relaxation in the tiniest glimmer, and allow that to deepen. We would come back, we would sing the same phrase again. We'd stop, go within. And then I would ask them to infuse their voice with whatever genuine feeling they had inside,
Yeah.
and the sound would change.
Wow.
We would stop and we would feel again. And it was this investment. I wasn't saying anything. The technique got better. It improved more than any outside in approach that I
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
needed
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
And
I
it's just like,
remember. I remember discussing with somebody once whether you make a student repeat a phrase till they get it technically right, or you focus on the musicianship and the expression, which means they're repeating it anyway, but you focused on the music and they're still repeating it. And so actually the techniques got better, but as a sideline of the fact that you focused on the music.
yes. Yeah, these were untrained singers, and yet
Yeah.
the inspiration, that inner sound quality was making it better.
Do you think you were also training their ears though? Because you were looking for that spark and then the repetition, and they were listening more. Oh, let's do it again. Let's listen. Is that better or is that not better?
Yeah.
So were you improving their ability to listen, or they're listening for detail and they're listening for expression and they're listening for the connection,
Yeah.
rather than they're listening for, is this the right note?
Yes. So here's what I think it is. It is
Okay.
deepening and expanding awareness. Because anytime we take the time to stop, to meditate, to focus within, we're we're allowing our awareness to deepen in the present moment. Because
Mm.
this is all we got. This whole
Yeah.
lifetime, this is it. You know, we can put our brain in the future, we can put our brain in the past, we can put it sideways to what this person is thinking, or how we want to impress that person. But really, all we have is ourselves. And we have this rich experience awaiting us for exploration, for this inner exploration. And music is such this divine gift to take us deeper and deeper into that inner experience that we have.
So
So
is that how you teach cello now, or how you practice your cello? Is that how you work?
that's what I try to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So um, and so getting back to how they improved, whenever you increase your present awareness, you're automatically able to absorb more of what's going on around you. You're able to accept, you're able to be aware of different things. So my my guess is that they were more aware of pitch. They
Mm-hmm.
were more aware
Mm-hmm.
of these things on a deeper than thought level,
Yes.
that they were able to listen and to blend
In a
and to
feeling
work.
it kind of level rather than an academic kind of level.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the most amazing thing we as musicians can experience are those moments in performance where, and and I'll try to describe this as fully as I can, where perhaps time stands still and you just feel this woo, this presence, this connection, this,
Yes.
and that's why I call my work the inspired connection, because it's that moment where you feel connected to yourself, or to the music, or to your colleagues on stage, or to the audience, or to the performer if you're in the audience, and you're just in that state of oneness. You're able to connect to something greater than yourself. And there's no need to put labels on it, except that it's something bigger than anything you could possibly create for your own experience,
Mm.
or
Mm.
imagine. You're just
Mm.
feeling this place.
Mm.
And so into that, other people feel that as well. And so,
Yes.
working with this choir, I was able to get to those places where people could say, I felt God in the room during that performance. And you
Yes.
said, and I would say, you felt that too. And because it was just, it's nothing that you can pin down and describe, but it's just that feeling of something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And it's such a shame that the God word has so much stigma around it. And I almost think it's unfair, because jazz musicians use the word God all the time in this very free, you look, I read their writings, and they just use God so comfortably. And with classical musicians, it's kind of like this. No, 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 no. You don't tell me. uh, and it's at least in my experience in the United States, if somebody did have a spiritual inclination, they kept it very close to their chest. It was not talked about. It was not something that was broadcast. There were a few times it was that, intervarsity spirit fellowships would be there, but it was kind of like that's them, and then there was everybody else. It was not an inclusive
Spiritual
sort of
connection. Yeah.
but yet, it's music is spiritual. We are working with sound waves, and we're taking the consciousness of the performer that's trying to channel the inspiration of the composer, and and we're having this experience that cannot be defined by anything else besides spiritual. We're
So
feeling these awakenings.
how do we practice being more meditative, spiritual performers? How do we improve our performance as musicians, not by being driven, but by being aware and connected? How do we do that in practice? If you've got 40 minutes, 45 minutes in your day, and you're going to sit down with your instrument or your voice,
Yeah.
what do you do to be the most effective that you can, but without forcing that effectiveness?
Yes. Okay. So here is the equation. The first 10% of your time needs to be spent on stilling the body and stilling the breath. The next 10 or 20% needs to be focused on creating sound with the least amount of tension and the greatest amount of energy. It's so amazing how the pianists, I've talked with pianists who have to keep the sound going with their focus, because as soon as their focus goes, the sound changes. It's this fascinating thing, and I've explored this with pianists. I'm not a pianist myself, and I wish I could have a piano here, but you have one chance to strike a chord, and then if you focus on that chord, here, I don't know if it'll work, but I'm going to try playing this. And as I'm focusing, I'm drawing the listener's focus in with my own experience. Whereas if I do the same thing, my focus leads a completely different experience.
It's almost the difference between a note and a sound. The second one was the sound.
Yes. That's interesting. Oh, thank you for that. Wow. That's beautiful. So that next stage is about creating music. So for me, it's my favorite part of the day, because I just get to create sound on my instrument, just being totally present with it. And just going on, and afterwards it just leaves you so clear and so calm.
I tell you
And
what's interesting there is the way we teach beginners. We often teach them to, if it's piano, read a note and put the right finger on it. But what you're saying there actually directly connects with why somebody wants to learn an instrument. Somebody's heard that instrument and inspired by the sound, and they want that sound, that quality of sound. They don't want to know if it's a C and it's his finger and that's where the finger goes. They want to reproduce that sound. And whether they've seen Lisa Simpson and they want to play sax, or whether they've heard somebody in a concert hall, or whether they've heard another student at the school play and they've thought, I want to sound like that. It's the sound of the instrument, not whether it's a C and where the fingers go, that has inspired them.
Yeah. And more than that, it's what gets awakened. So many people, it's such a tragedy that so many musicians are miserable because they're doing what they're supposedly love to do. I mean, we pick up we pick up music from that love of what it does to us, rather than, well, I'm gonna go and make a lot of money, so I'll become a musician. That's not often the case as we go. So, uh, and then as going back to the 45 minutes of practice, so we've got the
Yes.
stilling the mind,
Yes.
stilling the breath, stilling the heart,
Yep.
allowing the heart and the vulnerability a chance to come through. I used that word earlier. Uh, it takes a lot of courage to be vulnerable in this, because everybody's the critic. We
Yes.
it it's so difficult, and I myself was victim of this for 30 years of my own playing, and I've learned that if I change my focus to I must please them, or I must have them think highly of me, because those are two highly poisonous thoughts and they're highly insidious. But if I change that to how can I serve them, or how can I have compassion for
Yes.
them, and how can I share the inspiration? And so that, for me, is the key. If I cannot feel inspired myself, it's not likely that I'm going to enjoy the performance.
Tell me. I want to relate to something we were saying just before we started the interview. You were talking about people feeling compassion, and if you feel compassion, you can't possibly even not express through music.
Exactly. And like, you can't have stage fright while you are experiencing compassion. It's just the brain can't hold those two things at the same time. They might try to flip back and forth, but if you're practicing compassion, if you're practicing the energy going from you towards the audience with a kindly intention,
Yes.
that
So our best performances might be when we feel compassion rather than when we feel fear.
yes. And so it's going to be difficult to uh, it's going to be a fascinating opportunity to learn how to uh, look out into the audience and change the perspective of, here are all these people looking for a perfect musical uh, execution of this piece of music, rather than, here are these individuals. They might look on the outside like they've got it all together. They're just out for a good time. But
Mm.
to really go beyond that, and to realize that even though these people may look like they've got it made,
Yes.
that
Yes.
deep down there might be some kind of suffering within them.
Yeah. There was a singing teacher of mine who said that you have a circle around you that's your personal space, where if somebody you don't know very well comes in there, you feel uncomfortable. And she said, when you perform to an audience, it feels like that circle of space is getting closer and closer and closer to you. It's narrowing in and it's choking you. She said, instead, what you do is you take the music and you expand that space and you
Exactly.
take the music out to them. That changed my mindset when she said that.
Yes, yes, and that's what I've also learned, is to take that center within our spines, within our heart,
Yes.
and to just expand this energy into the room. And it doesn't take, you don't have to be uh, any kind of a spiritual saint or yogi to realize that your energy takes up space.
Yes.
Like, you can withdraw completely and you can make yourself very small, or you can walk out on stage and just have your energy be
Yes.
a really, really
Yes.
big energy.
Yes.
That's our choice.
In the
And
same sense that the mood of somebody in a room can change the whole room.
exactly, you can walk into a room and you can be like, oh, how many of us have gone into juries or an audition where you walk in and immediately the energy in the room is just,
Yeah.
there is nothing pleasant about it at all, and you have to fight your way through that. Uh, and it's like a fight. It's not a sharing. It's a fight to go through.
Yeah.
And so that's my job, is to allow the audiences that opportunity to allow them to be a little vulnerable themselves. So we meditate, we do just a little bit of breathing together, and then just be with our breath. And it doesn't take long. It takes like 2 minutes to open up this experience, and it's remarkable how that amplifies the
Changes.
experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And as a performer, you want the audience on your side, and
Absolutely.
that is, and
So,
we always.
so bringing us back to that 45 minutes, you've got that breath, you've got that vulnerability, and a lot of what you've talked about is awareness, awareness of tension. You haven't talked about forcing to remove it, just becoming more aware of where you're at, more aware of who you are, and connecting with your soul almost.
Yeah. And so then after things are warmed up and you're moving into your piece, so for me, we all have these things that we would like to change in the past. Mine is, gosh, I really wish I could have learned how to relax more as I practiced.
Yes.
But I was again driven by fear, and
Yeah.
whenever the ego starts stepping in, if things aren't exactly the way you want it to,
Yeah.
you come back to that beginner's mind.
Yes.
That's the
Yes.
one thing that separates the professionals from the quote unquote amateurs. I don't say amateurs of its true sense of like loving what they do, but the amateurs that are wannabe professionals who aren't there because they haven't done the work.
Yeah.
The professionals are those who have done the work on themselves to be okay with imperfection and do the necessary work to improve it.
Mm.
So having the clarity of mind to go as slowly as possible, to
Yes.
break things down
Yes.
into the technical
And to
aspects,
take your time.
to take the time and to build that foundation that is not based on, you know, if I have to do this, I'm no good, and then everything comes crumbling down.
Yes.
Or I only have a certain amount of time before this needs to be perfect, or, you know, yada, yada, yada. Or I don't
Yes.
want to have to be, I don't want to face the fact that I'm imperfect. There
Yes.
it is. I don't want to face the fact.
A lot of a lot of what you say. This is going to be slightly off the spectrum. I spent some time staying with a Gambian West African tribe called the Mandinko tribe, and I learnt lots of singing and drums from their griot. And the griot's job was to hand the songs and the drumming down from generation to generation, so they don't get lost. And he said to me, you can't perform the piece until your music spirit is in your body, and the music spirit comes up from your feet right through your soul. And we would start drumming, and we would drum till the music spirit was in our body, and then we would start performing.
Yeah. That, don't you wish you could have that before a performance?
Yeah.
I'm thrilled just feeling that vibration come in and the musical
Yeah.
spirit.
Yeah.
You know, and we send poor kids out and say, like, okay, there's a stage, you know, go, it's your turn. Like, ah! And we send them out there so ill prepared in this way. So, but that brings me to my final aspect of the practice session,
Yes.
sharing inspiration, being able to end the practice with that inner experience. So being able to, if it's just taking a phrase and taking the music to your feel good spot,
Yes.
using the music to take you to that feel good spot where you feel the music spirit come into you.
Yeah, this guy was called Dembo. That was definitely his moment. Dembo's moment was that feel good spot. The music spirit was in him,
Yeah.
and he was in it.
Yeah. Because how we begin things is important. How we end things is also important. In every sacred ceremony, there is a beginning and there is an ending. There are these sacred moments that we have. So, and one other aspect that I focus on is that sacred moment of beginning sound, of how sound, of a note will, how you transition from silence into sound. You know, what is going to be, how is that silence going to be broken?
I
It can be
think I've learned. Yeah, I think I've learned more from singing about that. As you mentioned glottal, you know, how your note onset, as singing teachers call it. How does that note begin? And yet again, the note ending, does it stop glottal? Does it have a delayed vibrato? Does it crescendo and end abruptly? And so the more you listen to that kind of how the note begins and how the note ends, I think more the beauty and the expression comes out. So it's not, is it the right note? It's
Right.
what am I doing with that note? Where is it coming from and where is it going?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, how we end things always needs to be that inner recognition of what has changed, and taking a moment to just thank music, to express gratitude. Because again, gratitude uh, is another antidote to stage fright.
Yes. Yes.
You can't have stage fright, performance anxiety when you are grateful.
Mm.
When you feel that gratitude, there's the mental gratitude of like, okay, thank you. But when you are being able
Sincere.
to sit in that,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
we have to change, we have to allow music to change us first
Yes.
before our music can change others.
Just to enjoy that moment.
We're not going to get the transformation that we're looking for through pleasing audiences.
No, it's not from somebody else saying well done. It's from you being in the moment. I think the other thing I learned from Dembo was the music spirit coming up through your feet. It's the concept that it rises through your body and then it's engaged your whole body. It's
Yes.
not in your brain.
Yes.
It's come up through you. And
Yes.
it was always, it has to come from the feet. Which is very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, David, I think that's a perfect moment to be grateful to you and to thank you for your time in helping us channel our inner selves through our voices or our instruments or just our being in life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time.
What a pleasure. We only were introduced yesterday, and here we are. This has been
I know,
fantastic.
amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.